Biblical basis for spiritual formation in the home. The Bible has much to say concerning the family. A number of principles, values, and attitudes emerge as one reads and studies the scriptures. And in the field of family life, many modern writers have attempted to develop a theology for the family from these biblical principles and instructions. This discussion shall not attempt to take an exhaustive look at the biblical principles or to explain a theology for the family. Instead, Deuteronomy 6, which exemplifies the biblical principles of spiritual formation within the family, shall be explored and highlighted. Deuteronomy 6 is one of the most important references in Scripture that describes the role and process of spiritual formation in the home. This vital book contains Moses' last instructions to his people, the nation Israel. Moses uses this time to re-emphasize and stress the importance of the Ten Commandments, other aspects and requirements of the covenant and, most important, the God of the covenant. This book is essentially Moses' last will and testament. Through Deuteronomy, Moses shares his intimate and dynamic relationship with God so that others will remember to love and worship the covenant God, Jehovah. Moses is eager to ensure that the then current nation of Israel and the future nations of Israel would indeed fulfill the covenant of God and love God with all their hearts, souls, and strength. In Deuteronomy 6, Moses gives a thorough explanation of how the people of Israel were to assist their children in remembering the covenant of God and the God of the covenant. The central truth of this chapter is the description of God in verses 4 to 6 and the instruction to the families on how they were to portray this God carefully and thoroughly to their children. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength.
These commandments that I give you today are to be upon your hearts. These verses describe God as unique and special. He alone is God. There is no one else like him. God is a jealous God and demands single-minded devotion and worship from his people. He and he alone should be the object of the nation Israel's worship. They should not have any alliances or allegiances that pose threats to this single devotion to God. Clearly, Moses is alluding to the first of the 10 commandments and defining what that commandment means. After describing God in this manner, Moses commands the nation of Israel to love God totally. He uses the phrases with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength. These point out the way in which the love of God was to permeate all the lives of the Israelites. The heart refers to the mind, will, and emotions. The soul reminds one of the vitality, essence, or sources of life. Strength suggests the disciplines of the body or the daily work or tasks. Moses' point is that the love of God must be consuming and permeate all that the Israelites were as humans and as the people of God. Loving God was not contained or compartmentalized. It was not something added as an afterthought. Loving God was the very purpose of their existence and meaning. In the remainder of the chapter, Moses encourages and requires the nation of Israel to pass this love on to future generations. Numerous principles for family spiritual formation are given by Moses. First, it is clearly the responsibility of the community of families that constituted the nation of Israel to impress these truths upon their children. Notice that Moses was not speaking just to the priests or prophets of that day. He was requiring the fathers, mothers, grandparents, aunts, and uncles to assume responsibility for the spiritual formation of the children.
The second principle is that spiritual instruction concerning the covenant, the 10 Commandments, and God was to be a continual part of the daily lives of God's people. Decrees, laws, commands, and the very person and character of God were to be explained in the natural activities of the day by the parents and extended family. These abstract principles would be explained concretely as the families experienced the natural flow of life as the people of God. The rituals and festivals, stipulations, and the values and attitudes practiced in the regular routine of life served as catalysts for the child's natural inquisitiveness and were to be modeled and explained in detail. Worship and spiritual formation were to be the very fiber of life, and the families were commanded to take the role in this vital instruction. Also, note how informal and personal this instruction was. No one was designated teacher. Everyone was to take part in the spiritual formation, with the family assuming main responsibility. Notice, too, how the natural inquisitiveness of the child as he viewed the parents putting their faith into action set the agenda for the spiritual Formation, the final principle relates to the purpose of spiritual formation. While Moses' instructions emphasize the decrees, commands, and laws of God, these are not the main emphases or the purpose of spiritual formation. Instead, the core of spiritual formation is a relationship with the God of the covenant, the deliverer of Israel. Moses is concerned that the future generations of Israel know and love God, not just the commandments of God. The decrees, laws, and commands were given to point people to the person of God. The specific content of God's instruction to the nation Israel is important, but it is not an end or goal. Spiritual formation is not concerned with children knowing content for the sake of content. It is concerned with sharing content as one aspect of assisting children to know God and love Him totally. Today, God still requires that families fulfill these principles of spiritual formation. Parents must assume the main responsibility for the spiritual formation of their children. The Church of God is the community that should encourage and assist the parents in this role. The Church cannot and should not assume this responsibility for the parents. Also, parents must not expect the Church to fulfill their responsibility. Lastly, the need for informal, natural, daily spiritual formation still exists. The mistake many families make is to view spiritual formation as an add-on instead of a core that permeates the entire life of the family. Clearly, Moses' instructions to the nation of Israel are true for the people of God today.